Let's start. Good evening, students. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Audible.
Yes. Today we welcome Nitish sir again. I do not want to introduce Nitish sir again because we have already met him explaining about the Consumer Act.
Yes.
So thank you, Nitish sir, for giving us another opportunity explaining about recovery of money and other proceedings in court. Today it will be a very fantastic session for many. I have many students have many doubts who had earlier discussed with me. Today I think this will be a good platform for them to learn also. So we welcome you once again, sir. We can start the seminar. Yeah.
Thank you, Abhilash.
Thank
Thank you for having me once again. Hello, everyone. Today we are here to discuss and deliberate on the issue of money recoveries. See, India is a country of entrepreneurs and businessmen, and almost major segment of employment comes from business. It is very fascinating to tell you all that almost 56.01% of population in India is self-employed in form of businessmen and professionals. This was a survey conducted in the year 2019, which said that this percentage of population is self-employed in form of business or of professionals. And for professionals or the self-employed or businessmen, the most important thing of that profession is money. Money evolves in growing, it helps in growing business, it helps in expanding the horizon of business, and timely payment of debt is one of the most essential part of the business management. It is, it is a strangling figure, but almost 74% of these self-employed businessmen or small-scale businessmen have problems in recovery of money in India. So 74% of the population faces this crisis of timely payments of debt in one form or the other, or one form or the another. And for growing any business, if there is a delay in payments, it is always very difficult for a business to grow at a scale where a particular entrepreneur or businessman wants it to grow. So therefore, in this segment, we'll be discussing as to how a money or unpaid debt can be recovered, what is the quickest method, and how effective our remedy or the judicial system is. See, the problem is a smaller debt produces a debtor and a larger debt produces an enemy. And in the present circumstances of economy, nobody is ready to have an enemy on board in a profession or in a business. So everybody wants that the payment should be paid on time or the outstanding dues are cleared on time and let them peacefully run their business. But see, the business doesn't run or the life doesn't run in an idle situation. So everybody in its life encounter or life of a business or a life of an individual person encounters a situation where there is an outstanding debt which has not been paid after a lot of reminders, and there is always a question as to how we can recover it, what will be the method of recovery, and how fast can it be done. The main problems in a money recovery is oral contracts. India is a country of trust where people have huge trust on each other, or businessmen, specifically in the MSME sector or the sector unorganized sector, have huge do their business only on the oral contracts. Oral contracts is very difficult to prove in a court of law. That requires deliberations, evidences, heavy reliances upon the third party evidences. So oral contracts is one of the major problems which we face across when we are dealing with the issue of money recovery. Second is faulty written agreements. So normally this unorganized sector or these faulty written agreements which are drafted by unprofessionals sometimes prove disastrous in a court of law when you are litigating for money recovery or money recovery. So these agreements have to be professionally drafted. Third is the judicial system. Directly criticizing our judicial system is somewhat I have to do in this segment, because in particularly money recovery matters, higher court fees, higher arbitration fees, and lastly, I would put it on our profession as well. The higher advocate fee is responsible for slow judicial system or slow adjudication of methods. And lastly, the jurisdictional error. So Many a times business is always based in multiple jurisdictions. Not deciding upon a jurisdiction for adjudication of disputes is one of the problems which the parties face at a later stage when the debt is unpaid. So in my segments, I'll be covering all those four issues. What are the alternates of the regular civil channels, and how fast can the procedure be completed? First, the traditional method of civil suit. So civil suit, normally when we talk about money recovery, everybody, there is general opinion says, in case of money recovery, a simple money recovery suit can be filed, which is not generally the case. Civil suit can be of three types. One is a summary suit under Order 37 of the Code of Civil Procedure, which is only a summary suit specifically for suits upon bill of exchanges, hundis and promissory notes. This is for demand in money payable on a written contract, on an enactment, whether the sum sought to be recovered is a fixed sum of money or in nature of debt other than a penalty. Third, on a guarantee where the claim against the principal is in respect of a debt or liquidated damages. And lastly, suit for recovery of receivables instituted by any assignee or a receivable. So in case you seek to recover a debt along with interest, a summary suit under Order 37 CPC can be filed before the concerned hierarchy of civil court. Second is regular money recovery suit. So in case you are seeking damages, in case you are seeking compounding interest as a penalty, also you are seeking compensation for mental harassment, a regular money suit will be instituted in the appropriate jurisdiction of the civil courts. This will be instituted under Section 9 of the Code of Civil Procedure. And lastly, so supposedly there is a business agreement in which there is an agreement between party A and party B that supposedly 50 lakh rupees has been paid to you as a debt, out of which you repay only 25 lakhs, and 25 lakhs is still outstanding, or the part payment is still outstanding, and there is a written contract to that effect. Then specific performance under the Specific Relief Act, Section 14 of the Specific Relief Act needs to be instituted, for which you would be seeking a relief that the terms of the agreement be specifically performed by the respondents and the amount outstanding or the outstanding debt be repaid. So these are the three types of suits which can be instituted in an appropriate hierarchy of civil code. I may not be able to define the appropriate hierarchy of the civil code because that differs from state to state. In some states, there may be a jurisdiction of up to 5 lakhs. In some states, the high courts also have the original jurisdiction, so that would depend on state to state. Second is Negotiable Instruments Act. A general tendency of people is that when you are discussing about Negotiable Instrument Act, it is only in relation to the check bounce. That is not the case. So that is obviously one of the cases that if the check is provided to you and it is bounced, you can file a case under the Negotiable Instrument Act, which will be a summary trial and also have imprisonment provided under the Act. Also, the Negotiable Instrument Act provides for non-payment of bill of exchange, promissory notes, and hundis. So that also is provided under the provision of Negotiable Instrument Act. So you can also file a complaint under the Negotiable Instrument Act when there is a non-payment of bill of exchange, promissory notes under the NI Act. That will also be a summary trial. This NI Act is a kind of civil criminal law considered into an act which provides for a relief in both civil side as well as the criminal side. So the appropriate complaint under the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881 can also be filed before the concerned jurisdictional court. Third and the most used method for money recovery which exists today is filing a first information report or filing a criminal complaint under Section 420, 406, 405 of the Indian Penal Code. So 420 is basically cheating, as we all know. What we don't know is that there is a very thin line of difference between a civil suit or a money recovery suit and being cheated or having a criminal angle under the 420. What is that thin line of difference? If you intend to file a complaint before the concerned criminal court or before the concerned police station under section 420, 406, 405, stating that some amount, there was some business transaction and the person has cheated upon you and do not intend to pay the outstanding dues, you have to very categorically state and prove that his intent to deceive was from the starting of the business transaction. You cannot simply say that after part performance of the business activities, there has been an intent to deceive. Intent to deceive has to be from the starting, that is from day one when you start doing business together. So this has to be very categorically stated and proved in your criminal complaint. And as on today, normally, if you can prove from your conduct, from your documents, that his intent to deceive was from the very starting, this right now, though it would be not right to say, but it is currently the most effective method of money recovery. Fourth is insolvency and bankruptcy code. Insolvency and bankruptcy code, as we know, had abolished all the previous company laws and have instituted a new segment, new courts in our country. So under the insolvency and bankruptcy code, there are two heads of operational creditors and financial creditors. Financial creditors are the banking institutions, NBFCs, who have provided financial support to the particular business or to the particular company. And second is the operational creditors is normal business loan, business outstandings, and simple other creditors of the business. If the outstanding, since after the COVID situation of 2020, the monetary limit of instituting a proceeding under the insolvency and bankruptcy code has been increased to 1 crore rupees. So if there is an outstanding dues of 1 crore rupees, you can file a complaint before the NCLT of the concerned jurisdiction. If you are a operational creditor, you first need to serve a notice under section 8 of the insolvency and bankruptcy code, and thereafter file a complaint. Thereafter institute a proceeding before the NCLT. Operational creditors, though under the insolvency and bankruptcy code, may initiate the proceedings but might not have very effective remedy in the IRP meetings and thereafter in the dissolution process, because the first charge over the properties or the assets would be with the financial creditors. However, if the operational creditors outstanding dues is more than 10%, then they will be considered as the part of the meeting in the dissolution process, but would not have a right to vote. However, they will be directly involved in the day-to-day dissolution process. They might not have a right to vote as provided under the Act. So that is also one of the method of insolvency and bankruptcy code. If you have unpaid dues against big companies, big corporates in India, they are certainly very afraid of insolvency and bankruptcy, because that give a blot on the company's name. Also, if it is a public listed company, the value of shares goes down. So in those situations, just serving a legal notice under section 8 of the insolvency and bankruptcy code is very sufficient to to bring them to the terms of settlement and discuss a way out and recover your unpaid debts. Fifth is Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. So majorly Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 is considered as a business dispute resolution mechanism. However, this angle has not been evolved so far, that arbitration can also be invoked in money recovery matters. Very important aspect for this kind of dissolution or this kind of opting for this kind of remedy is your agreement should be properly drafted. Your agreement should have a proper clause of arbitration as a resolution method in case a dispute arises between both the parties both the signatories to the agreement. If there is an arbitration clause, you can invoke Section 11 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, serve a notice upon the respondent proposing a name of arbitrator for resolving the disputes of money recovery. The qualification or who can become an arbitrator is provided under the schedules of Arbitration and Conciliation Act. This, though recently, has been deleted, and there will be rules for qualification of arbitrator, I suppose, very soon. So if a person or fulfills the criteria of being an arbitrator, he certainly can be appointed as an arbitrator for resolving the dispute. And this is one of the very quick remedies for money recovery or payment of debts, because the timeline prescribed under the Act of 1996 is 12 plus 6 months. So 12 months is the period prescribed under the Act of 1996, which can be extended for a period of 6 months. That is a total period of 18 months for deciding a case under the Arbitration Act. Any award under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act is challenged under Section 34 of the Act of 1996 only on the grounds mentioned in the Act. So there are only limited 3 or 4 grounds on which the award of the arbitrator can be challenged. One of them is that it should be against the public policy. It is against the law of the land, or there is a law the award has been obtained by fraud or corruption. These are only very limited grounds on which an award under Section 34 can be challenged before the appropriate forum of court. It is very important to note that the award cannot be challenged on facts. The facts of the case is not relevant when you are questioning award of an arbitrator. It has been held by the Supreme Court and numerous high courts in various judgments passed over the period of time. Lastly, as the 6th point, this is one of the breakthrough in the process of money recovery if implemented strictly by the government. That is, proceedings under the MSME Act. So as I'm very sure that you must all be knowing about what the MSME sector it is, micro, small, and medium scale industries in the country, which has a turnover of from 1 crore to 250 crore, as per the Act of 2006. MSME, there is an online portal which has been started with the name of Samadhan. In Samadhan, any industries who has been registered under the MSME Act of 2006 and whose payment has been withheld by any particular buyer, has to either pay the debts within the period mutually agreed, or within the maximum period of 45 days from the date of the bill. And failure to pay any debt within this period of either mutually agreed or 45 days period will attract 3 times bank interest. The interest will be charged at 3 times of what bank charges on a saving account, compounded on monthly basis. So there is a huge interest penalty levied for MSME sector, that if the outstanding dues are not cleared within time, almost 3 times compounded interest will be charged on the outstanding dues. The MSME Act itself provides for redressal under Section 18 of the Act, where the MSME Facilitation Council is set up, which will act as a conciliator and arbitrator for resolving the dispute. The timeline prescribed under the Act of 2006 is 90 days for resolution of all conciliation as well as the arbitration stage. The award will be as good as an award passed under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which can only be challenged after payment of 75% of the award amount. So without payment of 75% of the award amount, it cannot be challenged in any court. it will be treated as a civil decree and can be executed before the concerned execution court. Very interesting, the fees of initiating this arbitration under the MSME Act of 2006 is very less. It is only 2,000 rupees, and thereafter very nominal sitting fee of the concerned arbitrator. On the contrary, though Arbitration and Conciliation Act is also an effective remedy, but the fees of an arbitrator is certainly an issue, because bigger the amount is, the bigger fees arbitrator shall draw, which is not in the case of MSME Act. This act of 2000, this is an act of 2006, but the provisions have been strictly incorporated in last 5 to 7 years. Certain states, facilitation council of certain MSME council of certain states are doing excellent job. They settle the dispute within a period of 90 days, and in fact, as soon as you receive the notice under the MSME Act or provisions of MSME, the buyer automatically approaches the seller to not pursue the case and settle your grievances as early as possible, because the penal provision or the interest which is to be paid is known to every business sector, and nobody is ready to pay more interest than the principal which is outstanding. So MSME Act 2006, if the infrastructure and the timeline provided under the Act of 2006 is strictly followed, in my personal opinion, this will be the most effective remedy for money recovery. The problem with the traditional civil suits is that the order of civil suit is appealable, and that first appeal is a matter of right. So in case of a higher amount, the appeal shall go before the High Court, and in case of a low amount, the appeal shall go before the District Court. And in first appeals, the pendency of before the first appeal is a matter of right, so it will be admitted. So even if supposedly the High Court has given a stay on 50% amount to be actually paid and 50% to be stayed, the timeline for finally adjudicating this appeal is not certain. In some high courts, it may go on for 10 years, if not less, and therefore the whole purpose of money recovery becomes futile. So there was a time when this money recovery was almost indefinite, and people had started taking checks as a security, so that in case the amount is not paid on time, they would put the check in the bank and then later on claim that the check has been bounced, and initiate a proceeding under the Negotiable Instrument Act. This whole interplay of Civil Suit and Negotiable Instrument Act was undertaken for the sole reason that the civil suit, the actual disposal of a civil suit would take almost 10 to 15 years, and by that time the principal which was actually due would have lost its actual value, and the business, since if the amount is kept outstanding for say 10 years, the business is losing its capital and not able to grow at the size that particular businessman or entrepreneur is thinking of growing its business. So this interplay, there was a 3-tier interplay between Civil Suit, Negotiable Instrument Act, and criminal case. So instead of filing a civil suit, they would give a simple legal notice for money recovery, then put the check into the bank for payments. When the check was returned due to non-availability of funds, they would also file a complaint before the concerned police, stating that the concerned buyer have committed a cheating under Section 420, and they had this intent of cheating from day one. However, with modern problems require modern solution. Ultimately, you cannot say that this mere non-payment of debt is a criminal act. There was obviously hue and cry from both the sides. So these 3 modern solutions, that is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, Arbitration and Conciliation Act, and MSME Act 2006, was brought into picture arbitration, yes, though yes, it is an expensive method of money recovery, but normally fees is equally divided, and you obviously can raise a plea before the arbitrator stating that the cost of litigation may also be awarded to him, since he is an innocent seller and he has nothing to, or there is the debt paid is with the buyer or the concerned second business entity, and he has difficulty in paying the arbitration fee. In my personal opinion, if the MSME sector or the provisions of MSME Act 2006 is strictly followed, the intent with which it has been incorporated in the Act of 2006 is strictly followed, infrastructure is provided, impanelment of arbitration is done on time, then this would prove to be one of the quickest method of money recovery. Now, very interesting part, there are a lot of businessmen which have a query that only companies or industries which are registered under the MSME Act can do litigation with each other under the Act of 2006, which is a wrong conception, because if I am the seller and I am registered under the MSME Act of 2006, and buyer is not registered under the Act of 2006, even then I can institute a complaint under MSME Act of 2006. There is no restriction saying that both the parties have to be necessarily registered under Act of 2006 for instituting a money recovery complaint or raising grievances or starting an arbitration under the Act of 2006. So this misconception is largely spread that both the parties need to be registered for starting any redressal procedure under the Act of 2006, which is not the case. So my take is that in future, MSME litigation under the MSME Act will certainly increase, and there is huge scope for lawyers who will be dealing with these cases in the nearing future. Over to you, Abhilash.
Hi, Nitish. Thank you very much for an insightful presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. So if you can give me permission, then I can ask this.
Yes, certainly.
Okay. So I have a case with me, I enter into a rental agreement and I have vacated the place because of personal reason, and landlord is not returning the amount, and that amount is 6 lakhs rupees. And every time he give me excuses, this and that, and for last 9 months, he's making a false promises. And now he has started picking up my call. So what kind of help I can get in the law of court?
Have you taken as a check for
No,
the security in your particular case? No. So the remedy available with you is that you first serve a legal notice for non-payment of the security amount and file a civil suit. Since you are not an industry, you are not doing business transactions, so you do not cover under the remaining part 3 or 4 options.
No, it is for Nitish, this is for the business. I have taken a shop on rent. So this is the business transaction which happened with the landlord.
But even then, you have to file a civil suit because you were not in a business transaction with the landlord. You had only taken you have given that amount as a loan or a security. Right?
Yes.
So in your case, summary suit under Order 37 of the CPC can be instituted in appropriate civil hierarchy courts.
Okay, and police will not help in this case, FIR and all?
You can seek a help, but there's no intent of thing which you can prove. There is other way out, there is that you can, write a mail seeking payment of your security amount if she agrees to, pay the writes on mail that she or he is ready to pay the outstanding security amount within a period of 1 month or 2 months, and then also she fails, or she or your landlord fails to pay, then certainly you can give a complaint to the concerned police station under section 420 and 406, 405 of IPC.
Okay, so I have given him legal notice, that is a personal legal notice, in the month of April and March too, by hand and by post. So that could be a ground for filing a FIR against them, because it's a kind of 420 and false promises.
You can try, but I don't think that would be very effective, because ultimately this is a civil dispute.
Yes.
Yeah, but your paper, you will not be able to prove the intent to cheat.
Yes, yes.
So the appropriate remedy would be before the civil, by instituting a civil suit.
Yes, but for an amount of 6 lakhs, a civil suit will be a costly affair. So is there other remedy other than the civil suit? Because like if I go
for summary suit, in summary suit, it won't be a costly affair, because when you file a suit, summary suit under Order 37 of the CPC, your court fee is drastically reduced.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Rupesh.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I have a quick question, sir. Basically, it's a real-time scenario wherein one of my friend is undergoing this situation. I need your kind advice, sir.
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, actually, he has borrowed money like around 2,50,000, and that borrower he has lent that money to him, and he has given that amount, like a little bit of amount he has already paid, but everything is in cash.
Okay.
And that borrower now suddenly he has increased the rate of interest it's too very much. And he said, I've already paid so much money. I think he has already paid more than principal amount.
So you can just tell him that, we have already paid the principal amount. There was no understanding of rate of interest, so I'm not going to pay anything more. Since I believe that this is purely an oral contract, there is no written contract.
Yes,
am I
sir.
right?
Exactly,
So
exactly.
You can you can use this fault in law in your favor, saying that there was no oral contract, there was no understanding of or mutually acceptance of the rate of interest. So I would be only paying the principal amount, and anything above, I want that amount to be refunded back to me, so that at least the current situation in which your friend is can be settled.
Yeah, one drawback is he has given a blank check. What he has done is that the borrower, the person who has given the money, he has put that thing and he has changed into like check bounce case, and he has filed a case against my friend under negotiable instrumentation act.
The amount which you have refunded back, is there a proof to it?
No, sir, that everything was in cash, sir. That is the main issue.
That is the main issue. Then through evidence, you have to establish that the amount which was outstanding was already paid in cash, and this check was given as a security. And for a check which was given as a security, complaint under the Negotiable Instrument Act is not maintained.
Okay. The only thing that he has done is he has put double the amount in the check. He has written.
So there are two major defenses in a check bounce case. First, you have to prove that the writing on the check was not of yours, of your friends. So, and this amount was later filled by him or his agent, and then placed in the bank, which is illegal. Second, this check was given as a security. The original amount already stands paid. So therefore, this complaint under the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881 is not maintainable.
Oh, okay. Very good, sir. I think this is a very good advice, sir, because
yes,
we can actually prove
handwriting is one of the grounds in the NI Act cases, when you do not put it, or there is a mismatch in the writing of words and numbers, that also is a valid ground. Even if there is a change of ink of your pen, that also is a ground for disqualification of check.
Okay. So how can we get it verified, sir? I mean,
You file an application for FSF.
FSF means?
Forensic.
Science.
Okay. Fine, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, Manish here.
Hi, Manish.
So just a quick query. You said for MSME, how a borrower or a person who has taken a loan, if I have to file a complaint against any corporate, how will I know whether that is under MSME or not? They would definitely not reveal the annual turnover, as you said, 1 CR to 250 CR should be the annual. How will I judge whether the company stands in that turnover or not, and whether that MSME Act is applicable to them or not?
So you are asking from the perspective of the buyer or the seller?
I'm asking from a perspective of a buyer. Yes, the question can come from a seller perspective also, that I can always have a defense that I am not in that MSME. MSME Act is not applicable to me as a seller.
See, as a seller, MSME Act is for your benefit, because once you get registered, it's a free of cost registration, just like an Aadhaar card registration. And then you can take benefits of all the mechanism provided for a quick redressal of your dispute. Now, generally, as a practice, what all MSME registered companies are doing is that in their bill, just below the name, where they usually write their, GST numbers and all details, they are also putting MSME numbers or Udayam registration number or Udyog Aadhaar number. So if it is an Udayam registered or Udyog Aadhaar is there, that means that company is registered, that firm is registered under the MSME. Even otherwise, you can check on the MSME website the list of industries which are registered. I think there is a PDF list provided state-wise as to which industries or which small scale shops or small business houses are registered on the MSME portal or not. But non-payment of debt or not knowing whether that particular seller is registered under the MSME or not cannot be a defense for a buyer. If there is an unpaid debt and the debt is outstanding for more than 45 days, that amount has to be paid. Subject to there is only one exception, that the product or the goods which was provided by that concerned MSME was not of appropriate quality, and you had already wrote for return or raised a debit note. So in that case, the provision of or the interplay of the Act of 2006 doesn't come into picture.
Got. So my question was
necessary that you raise a debit note. So supposedly there is some severe quality issues. You ordered A++ quality of a product and you received grade B quality. So you can immediately inform him through mail or a written letter, of which a speed post receipt can be saved, and raise a debit note for return of the products. In that particular case, you will not be attracted the penalties of MSME Act 2006.
Got it. Sir, second, another query was regarding the bounce case. If a corporate, if any MSME gives a checks to you and the same gets bounced, I have had a personal experience that when you go to police to file a FIR or complaint against it, they don't entertain these complaints because they said it's a civil matter.
Correct.
They are not involved in the civil. They say that you have to hire a lawyer or get a PCR, which is a complaint through a court, then get an order from the court, then we will register a complaint against it. Otherwise, it's just a formality that the police station or a nearby station would do. They
Correct.
don't register the case.
See, the reason for this is that when a check gets bounced, the criminal complaint is directly provided under the Act of Negotiable Instrument Act, for which the NI codes are established. So therefore, the only reason that the check got bounced and you want to file a criminal complaint, it does not fulfill the criteria of 420. You have to very specifically show in your pleadings the intent of cheating from day one. So if you are able to do that, yes, police is bound to register, and in case police doesn't register, go to the, as you said, the PCR process, that you file a complaint before the magistrate under 156(3) and 190 of CRPC, and get an order from the concerned court of registering the FIR in the concerned police station. The
Yes,
practical difficulty is, since our country is run on data and statistics, so in case such complaints are regularly entertained by the police station, so there will be pile of FIRs and the investigation will be kept pending.
Right.
So there is a difficulty. They try not to entertain the complaint directly.
Oh, because that's a practical difficulty.
Yes, that is the practical difficulty. Practical difficulty exists for the reason that if there was a speedy disposal system for money recovery suits or check bounce cases under the Negotiable Instrument Act, 420 was not required to be opted by the person. You would not opt to file a criminal complaint if you have a quick redressal under the civil suit or the Negotiable Instrument Act.
Right.
So that thing needs to be improved, and that is for the legislation to do it. I do not see any time sooner that it will be changed.
Got it, sir. Thank you so much.
Hello, sir. Last question, sir.
Yes, Rupesh.
Yeah, you said that forensic check, right? Forensic science laboratory. Hello.
Yes, correct.
Yes, sir. Once I am very sure it will be proved. So against that person. So can we file a written complaint for seeking compensation for cheating regarding he has written his own amount?
No, then you can file a case for wrongful prosecution.
Oh, that's it.
Yes, you can file a case against him saying that you were wrongfully prosecuted and a criminal action was brought into picture wrongfully against you, for which you can seek a compensation, as well as you can also file a FIR FIR under the provisions of Indian Penal Code.
Okay. The only concern is we have taken and given in cash, right? So we can't prove that. That is.
But you can certainly prove that this is not your handwriting, and this was taken forcefully, and it was given as a security.
Okay. Fine.
You know, that is for the lawyers to do that, and it is the usual business.
Okay. Okay, sir. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Any last questions? So I think this session was made more informative by questions raised by students. I think so. What do you say, Nitesh?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Answering the question is always better than giving information. Information is readily available. When you do a simple keywords type on Google, you will get all the information. But answering the question makes it more interesting.
Yeah. So thank you. Then thank you, Nitesh sir. We come to the end of this session. It was again a wonderful, informative seminar. So we wish to see you again with your next topic and your next subject. We'll definitely
very soon. Sure.
Very soon. Yeah. Thank you all, students. Also. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. It was very informative and it was very clean and clear, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.